As a fearful avoidant, you might find yourself oscillating after a breakup between wondering if you did something wrong and going into this sort of mode of regret, or feeling like you were completely free of the past and grateful that you're no longer trapped in a relationship that wasn't serving you. And you may even find that this is something that you shift back and forth between on a daily basis. Sometimes throughout the day, sort of going from one end of that perspective to the other. And you may find this to be draining and exhausting. And then that can get really compounded if you then find out that your ex is rebounding or moving on. And it can really lead to a lot of confusion. And again, a lot more pinballing back and forth. So, I want to take you through in this video some really crucial steps that you want to be able to take in order to move on, especially if you find that your ex has started rebounding or started dating somebody new. So, the very first thing that you want to start by doing is having really clear boundaries. And I mean really clear boundaries so that you're not wasting your own time creating your own suffering. What do I mean by that? I mean that when you get yourself into a position where you are checking your ex's social media, you are comparing yourself to the person your ex is now dating and seeing, you are stalking that person and trying to get all the details about their life and learn about how they met. You're hurting yourself when you're doing that. Pay attention to how you feel when you're doing that. Pay attention to the feelings in your body. They feel bad. It feels painful. And while it may seem on one level like you get this little short-term gratification hit of like my curiosity, if my curiosity is satisfied, it's not actually going to be something that helps you move on or helps you feel good about yourself or helps you feel good about like everything that you have to come, this new fresh chapter you have ahead of you because you're no longer with that person. So it is of the utmost importance that you set some really strong boundaries around social media, around reaching out to your ex, around any comparison games that the mind likes to play and how to really make sure you're not spending time there. And just any other emotional or personal boundaries or even boundaries in your thinking, right? Or mental boundaries, so that you are allowing yourself the space from this challenging situation so that you don't feel like that band-aid keeps getting ripped off every time you go back and like gain more information about what's happening with your ex and this new person. Okay. So even if you want to pause this video, setting some really strong boundaries out is going to be extremely valuable for your healing process going forward. Number two, have self compassion. This really goes in, well, it goes hand in hand with our third one, but I'll do each one separately. But I just can't stress these next two enough. Self compassion is something that I find fearful avoidance lack, especially when they are triggered. A lot of fearful avoidance have had the experience of like feeling triggered and feeling upset and feeling frustrated and having all this emotional energy and intense emotion coming up and then sort of taking it out on themselves in some way, whether that's through numbing of things, avoiding themselves, beating themselves up, um, critiquing all the mistakes they made and giving themselves a hard time about it, or just putting themselves down in their internal dialogue. So having self-compassion to understand that we have chapters and seasons of life. And when relationships don't work out, sometimes there's lessons for us. Sometimes there's things that we want to grow from. And sometimes it's because there really just weren't both people showing up and getting on board to make that relationship work. But don't get into that mind state where you're telling yourself all the painful things that are going to then happen. You'll be alone forever. You can't trust anybody. Like, really making sure that you're compassionate and kind to yourself in your internal dialogue and about the way you're thinking and perceiving these situations. So that will be super, super valuable. Number three, and this goes hand in hand with number two, it's fearful avoidance sometimes because they have a lot of that emotional turmoil. Um, they can find themselves where they really struggle to have healthy coping mechanisms. It's like the stronger emotion, the stronger the impulse or the compulsion is to sort of like numb that emotion. And oftentimes that can happen in a variety of different forms. It can be through excessive busying yourself. It can be through like workaholism. It can be through binge eating. It can be through alcohol, substances, all these different things. And, what you want to make sure is that because a relationship ended, that you take the work to be with your emotions. You do the work to like notice your emotions, to process the painful stories, the unmet needs, like to really do that inner work underneath so that you don't have all this emotional turmoil that you're then hurting yourself more indirectly by trying to cope from. right? Like if you end up drinking heavily, for example, day in and day out, that's not you helping yourself, right? That's you just trying to, from a survival kind of compulsive way, deal with the emotion. But emotion can be dealt with in much healthier forms. And it's really important to pay attention to that. So, just really auditing your coping mechanisms, checking in with yourself, and doing any inner work necessary to move through painful coping mechanisms. And if you want to check out for free for 7 days, we actually have a course all about specifically this if you are an FA. And it's called Overcoming Addictive Habits. And it's not about like necessarily addiction, although the principles there can absolutely be applied to that too. But it's really noticing like when we have those compulsions to like reach for an unhealthy habit or to drown ourselves out by numbing ourselves with TV or video games for hours and hours and hours, like wherever we're doing that, it's about helping us recognize that trigger underneath, recondition our coping mechanisms, like literally subconsciously reprogram to healthier, updated coping mechanisms, and also manage those feelings with some really powerful tools that are causing us to, try to numb out how strong those emotions are, like how to actually manage them at the root. So, anyways, we have a 14-day free trial, limited time. So you can check that out using the link in the description box below. And that actually gives you access to the whole school. So all of our courses, all the webinars with me each week, you can come and ask me questions, all that good stuff. So number 4 is checking in with what you need, right? So really checking in with what do I need to feel relief? How can I get the needs met that my ex was meeting in healthy, updated ways with new people in my life that I trust, with family members, with friends, with people who I'm spending time with, or in the relationship to myself. And the more you meet your needs, the more you're going to find that that correlates with self-soothing because it's a huge part of what it is. And also, the more you can check in with like, what do I need for the next chapter of life? What do I want to do? What do I want to create? Like, what are my next plans? And have something to focus your energy towards in the future. It will stop you from getting locked back and stuck in the past. And then the last but not least, number 5, is to really check in with what no contact looks like for you. I think it can be really um difficult for fearful avoidance to not like reach out to somebody to see if they get a response, to see what type of response they're going to get. Just out of curiosity, if that person is maybe willing to reconcile. But like, unless you're in a position where you are 100% sure that you want to make your past relationship work and you know all the hurt, the healing and work you need to do to make that happen and exactly what you need from your ex, and unless you see that your ex is willing to do that, I don't not necessarily recommend going to back to past relationships. Like, unless there are conscious conversations being had from both parties who are fully willing to invest in making a relationship work through discussion about boundaries, discussion about needs, strategies, talking about love languages. Like, unless there's some really great stuff happening, most times that we consider going back to an ex, we're just going back to repeat the same patterns. So, since in this case, specifically for this video, we're talking about like if your ex is already dating somebody else or moving on, you probably don't have somebody who's in a place where they can invest properly. And so, the best thing you can do for yourself is go no contact, maintain that no contact. And I have videos on this channel as well about no contact. I also have a whole course that talks about no contact in the under the light of like a breakup and what to do. If you want to check that out, that's included for free for 14 days below as well. So hopefully this all makes sense. Let me know any questions you have down below. Um, questions about no contact, questions about, the rebound situation. And also, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button, give it a like, and consider subscribing to this channel. And thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.